Julian Assange today should be a free man. He is a publisher. His organisation, Wikileaks, obtains and publishes freely information that it obtains. The literal definition of journalism. It happens every day in newsrooms across the continent. It is a key pillar of democracy. What he and WikiLeaks undertook was to expose horrendous war crimes covered up and concealed by the United States. And for that, he has been pursued. He has been persecuted. He has been imprisoned. He is now being tortured for exposing such crimes. The current president and then Vice President Joe Biden admitted that the persecution and prosecution of Julian Assange was basically because he had embarrassed the United States. Imagine that. Imagine being found to have killed civilians in cold blood, covered it up, and then attempting then to imprison the person that exposed those crimes. How perverse, how morally bankrupt. Shame. Now, our Australian government, in response to the persecution of this individual and his organisation, has offered for more than a decade now platitudes. They've spoken about passive consular assistance, as though Julian was an Australian overseas that had simply lost his passport. Lost his passport, got a bit lost somewhere overseas. Failing at every moment to recognise the reality that this is an Australian citizen who has been forced to flee and hide and was finally taken into the custody of complicit nations ad hoc to the United States. And has been subjected, as the UN has spoken so clearly, to the psychological torture of detention. Now, at this very moment, Julian's life is at stake. Let us make no mistake. And democracy itself is at stake. The question before the Australian government now is, will it prioritise, finally, after all this time, the liberty and human rights of an Australian citizen, and in so doing send a clear message that Australia is a nation which will champion the freedom of the press, which will champion human rights, which will push back on the United States of America and call them out when they commit human rights abuses? Or will they once again remain silent and hide behind diplomatic protocols? That is the decision before the new Parliament and the new government today. The Greens, along every step of the way, have been in solidarity with Julian, supportive of WikiLeaks, and I'm very proud to be joined today by Senator Peter Whish-Wilson, who has been a constant ally and advocate of Julian Assange, and to build on the work of so many Greens MPs that have been constant in their campaigning for his freedom and for his liberty. So we join here today, gathered to advocate for the freedom of a fellow citizen whose bravery and courage should be celebrated in this nation, whose freedom and whose imprisonment is bound up with our own. As the dove flew free today, let Julian soon be free. Let him go home to his family who love and who miss him dearly. Let him begin to heal from the scars and the wounds that have been inflicted upon him. Let us finally turn our attention to the prosecution, to the holding account of those who fired the bullets, who pulled the triggers, who covered up the crimes. Those are the ones who must be held to account now. Every lever must be pulled. Every conversation must be had. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese must pick up the phone to the President of the United States and state clearly that it is the position of the Australian government that Julian Assange be free. And we will continue as a community together to campaign, to organise across the continent until that moment comes. And when Julian is free, and when he is home and healed, if he is so able and wants to enter that building behind me, then he will be welcomed by the community and by the Greens as an individual of courage. A great Australian who, through his work, brought the sunlight of justice and the empowerment of truth to so many across the world. Thank you so much.